Okay, thank you so much. Now, you have been hearing about digital transformation, digitalization, digital disruption. On a lot of these vocabularies have been, being thrown across the rooms today, and I'm sure you would have had the idea of now exactly what exactly is happening in the space, what's going on, how should I move forward, etc. We wanted to take a little step back. I think I'm echoing a little. Maybe if I can just, yes, thank you. So what we wanted to understand with the eminent panelists out here, and it's a mixture of practitioners with the partners who are actually helping the decision makers out there to make that route to digital transformation and digitalization at the end. What we were trying to figure out, before we actually got onto this panel, was what's the ground reality? Where are we? What exactly is happening? And my experience suggests, and I'm sure most of you will agree, that while we are talking about digital transformation as the concept, a lot of us may just end up confusing digitization with digitalization. That's a start point. We need to understand how it goes from there. And that's exactly what I wanted to understand from the panelists out here. So without wasting too much of time, we are already a little delayed. Let's very, very quickly move on to my easiest job, which is the questions, right? Mr. Bansal, I would like to ask you first, if you may. Now, we all know that the pace of digitalization or digitization, whatever you call it, is accelerating phenomenally. Digital businesses are compelling us to relook the ways the models and the processes have been there around all this while, and relook the value it creates for the end consumers in that sense. Now, as I said, however, while doing all of this, while trying to understand, while connecting the dots, we all end up, or some of us end up confusing the two, the digitization with the digitalization, as Amit was also mentioning in his session. What's the way around? How do you see a role of a CIO influencing all of that? And specifically, I would like to understand from you, because you handle finance, technology, legal, supply chain, and you have the luxury to have that visibility across. What happens when the CIOs actually are just looking at technology and don't have that luxury? How to take it forward?
Yeah. So for me, my entire experience has been into healthcare. So I can talk and I can take examples from the healthcare perspective. When we say that digitization or digital transformation is happening, in healthcare, all of us would be visiting hospitals, right? But how many of these hospitals are really using this digital technology or digitization to the better outcomes, patient outcomes? When you visit a hospital, you get to a counter, you get the OPD slip, you visit a doctor, consult, and he gives you maybe advise you some diagnostics. Based on those diagnostics, he makes a kind of prescription for you. When you come out, then you buy these medicines, right? But what if entire process is linked right from your appointment creation, while sitting at home, while visiting the hospital, you need not stand in queue, your money is already paid, you have already straightforward go to the room of the consultant, show him, and even after diagnostics, whatever tests are there, test results are made available to the doctor, so that he can take a well-informed decision to treat the patient. Now, parts of these has already been done,
yep.
Right? So when I used to work in my earlier organization, we had hospital information system, we had a PACS wherein picture archival system was there, wherein X-ray was taken in X-ray room, but the doctor was able to see. But these were being done in isolation. And who was influencing those decisions? Was it CIO or the consultant or the doctor or the administrators, right, from the efficiency perspective? So I think now the role of CIO is not limiting to IT only, right? Now the role of CIO is to put a business hat, sit with business, think of their problems, their solutions, which IT can definitely enable. Today IT can do anything. Maybe in 10 to 20 years, maybe IT will be able to treat a patient also. Today, robots are already doing it, right? So, I think CIO's role will change once it moves towards putting a business hat and means put the IT aspect away, but link it, the IT aspects, once he understood the business requirement,
right,
and then connect the dots.
Perfect. Andy, you, I'm sure, have an interesting take. Since morning, you have been actually calling out the role of IT in all of this, and I'm sure you have very, very radical thought on that. Now, by definition, enabling, such a digital enterprise is all about changing the processes ground up, changing the methodologies ground up, and it's all about moving on to broader digital fabric or culture, if you will, right? How a right partner can actually help these IT decision makers to make that kind of change. That's a radical change. How to start that process?
Well, I mean, for me personally, what I would say is the kind of biggest challenge is you need to have a different thought process. Probably not a popular statement for the people in this room, but you need to stop talking to IT people. The reality is that business transformation, digital opportunities, etc., are rarely generated purely from people who understand the technology of IT. Business models emerge from people who understand how to create value in the system.
Right.
It's very rare that your competitor, next to you would say is, actually my CIO invented this. You're being killed by entrepreneurs. You're not being killed by the industrial giants. You're being killed by people who think differently. So I think for us, I mean, one of the things that I believe is fundamental is you need to stop talking to IT people, because the reality is they're not the ones who are seeing either the threat or the opportunity. They're the ones who may deliver a solution to that, but they're not the ones who are actually really challenged either by a threat to the business or really challenged by the fact that they can see growth opportunity. Those are business people. Those are CFOs. Those are chief execs. Those are heads of business lines. They're not the traditional IT people. And I think more than anything else, it's kind of disconnecting the fact that we have a whole suite of technology opportunities, whether it be AI, whether it be IoT, whether it be cloud, whether it be hybrid or whatever. These are delivery mechanisms. These are delivery components of solving problems. But what are the business problems?
Right.
I think once you can actually have a dialogue that elicits the right type of response from customers and that makes them explain to you in terms that matter most to them, where they see the opportunity or the challenge, then actually I think that's the better place to start. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's just a personal perspective on things.
Interesting. Now you mentioned about obviously the role of IT in that sense, and what's the start point. Now at the other end of the spectrum, and I'll include Himanshu on this one. The other end of the spectrum is that still to take care of the hygiene, to make sure that the fundamentals are taken care of. You still need to actually find the right technology, the right partner, etc. All of that, and as Andy was mentioning, you have no idea where your next competition is coming from. It's a completely blindsided or left field. It might be just coming in. Next entrepreneur is your biggest competition. Now, in that scenario, if you have to look at it, it's not big versus small. It's fast versus slow. How does, in your point of view, maybe hybrid IT or these kind of terms which are out there, can actually help CIOs to make sure the fundamentals and then have those kind of business conversation, elicit the responses what Andy was actually mentioning?
Okay, so I think before I answer that, just want to add, one point on, which my friend said. The biggest challenge for IT is not only to manage the data centers or the back-end infrastructure. I think they have to become the line of business. So they have to generate the revenue for the company. If they restrict themselves just to, manage the IT part of it, then probably, they'll be out of business soon. So they have to, I mentioned this in the morning as well, they have to find the new ways to, generate revenues for their company. That's how they can sustain, and then how you can bring actually value for your organization. Now coming back to to make that transition happen seamlessly, what CIOs or organizations should think of. I think it's again, you should take step by step, go step 1, step 2, and step 3, and decide whether is it working well for me, or do I need to change my strategy in midway, or how do we do it? So again, I think one of the example could be one of when we go and talk to our customers. One of the customers said, I'll again take example of cloud, because that's what I personally like it. So one of the customers said, we have a strategy, but we don't know how to go about it. We definitely want to move to cloud, but we don't know whether we should keep everything on-prem, or we should move everything off-prem, or should we have a midway?
Right.
So there are different considerations which organization need to take. First of them obviously is the business consideration. How big is your business? Do you have any SLAs requirement? Obviously every organization, every customer has, but what are your SLA requirements? There are banks, for example, due to the compliance and the regulatory challenges, they cannot keep data out of the premises, even if it is cheaper. So you have to think of those parameters as well. And then comes the technical challenges. So manage the technical and business perspective as well. Okay, today I decide to have my on-prem cloud, but do I have the skills to manage that kind of infrastructure? If I don't have the skills, that could be a wrong move. And again, it's not, how I'm moving, but, what are the precautions I'm taking, when I'm moving from this, journey A, or from point A to point B. So I think there are a lot of considerations which we need to take before deciding on a new technology or a new transformation path.
Interesting. Now, since we have been talking, Mr. Saha, I'd like to bring you in onto this one. Now, since we have been talking about, how we should be looking at it, and Andy suggests that don't talk to IT, right? We need to be actually, and as Mr. Bansal also mentioned, it's a business problem. It's not a technology problem, right? Technology is there. All the solutions there, and if what Himanshu was mentioning, if we actually take care of the hygiene, then it's easier to take those steps forward. The problem is to solve the business needs or address those needs. Now, that is easier said than done. Especially so if you are not a new age business, if you're not those startups who can actually be as nimble as they can be. Now, conventional industries, they would find it harder to move that fast in that sense. And digital transformation, on the other hand, requires you to be as nimble as it can get. What's your experience, or what's your understanding on how giants can be made nimble? How we can actually move forward onto this digital disruption much faster than what we want?
First, let me just tell you, I'm tremendously angry with what Andy said. He's going to take away my job. Yeah. So now, coming back to your question about how do we do this, right? Now, in my organization, a part of my team, we term it the IS business partner. Okay, these are the people who are technologically super smart. They are connected with the industry, with the technology, with the academia, but still, what they don't have is a core business knowledge. And just in the evening, I was having a talk with Andy. That is, I have training budget for them to understand how business works and to get the domain knowledge. That's extremely important. Because when you are striking a conversation with the business, if you're not using the right vocabulary, you will never connect with them.
Correct.
Right? Which brings back to the same point as Andy says, don't go to the IT. Because typically and traditionally, the way IT people think, and probably I'm one of those guys, is it's about technology. It's not about technology. Technology is the fundamental enabler, yes, agreed, but that's at the bottom plinth. What we try to do here is look at the business completely through a different lens. And that lens is called the digitalization. Okay? There's a fundamental difference between digitization and digitalization.
Correct.
Digitization is converting your traditional way of capturing data into zeros and ones. Finish, done. But what do you do with that? How does that 0 and 1 travel from one point to another point in the node? Okay? How is it processed? What do we extract from there? What is the intelligence that I get out of it? How do I action on top of the intelligence? That is a digitalization. And at the end, what is a business value that we are creating? Correct. That's important. If we go to the business saying that I got a fantastic app, the business will say, yes, very good, but then what does it bring for me? from the business perspective. What can I go back to my business investors and tell them, look, I'm going to do this, and this is going to increase my top line by 3% or 5%. Show me that, show me the money. And that cannot be done by the IT. So what requires over here is a very strong collaboration, and that's what we learned from Fujitsu about the co-creation, right? When we went into this journey, we made sure that it's we being actually a minority in the team. My team was a minority. We had very strong participation from the business, from Fujitsu, from industry experts. In fact, I have a workshop coming up a month down the line. I'm getting insurance experts from the industry. Why do I need that? Because my IT guy cannot do that one.
Correct.
Okay, so it goes back to your point.
But then the question is, while Andy actually, you kind of disturbed the hornet's nest out there. But while what he was making the point, and you had a fantastic reply to that, what I'm also leading to is how do you handle the legacy? Because your IT, while he has to understand and train,
right.
But then there are systems and those hygiene levels which have been there for whatever it's worth. And to move on at that refresh pace, or the move on onto the newer aspects will take time. How do you marry both the worlds? How do you actually handle legacy in that sense?
Okay, fantastic. So typically, if you go back to maybe 10 years back when you saw the Titanic movie, right? It got crushed against that iceberg. It couldn't take a fast turn because large organizations are exactly like that.
Absolutely.
The momentum is huge. It has started its journey. To change the track interim is very difficult. Okay, it's absolutely not possible. So then how do you do it? You know that it is required, right? We will get obsolete if we don't get digitalized, but then how do we do it? And that's where comes in few things in the dynamics. One is partnering, okay? You have to partner with somebody who knows what digitalization is, okay? Not just the technology, but how do we implement that on the ground? How do we support that? And then how do we mature that throughout the life cycle of the business? That's extremely essential. Second, as I mentioned in one of my previous presentation, repurposing of your people. That's also very, very important. While you are in the journey, make sure that your people are also being transformed, which means you have to make a tremendous amount of investment in people, recalibrating them, retooling them, reskilling them, so that they can support this journey forward. Okay, so new technology, new partner, so your whole partner ecosystem will change.
Right.
When I joined Syngenta, and till today, this is about 2 years, you won't believe how many vendors I've brought on board. Okay, Fujitsu is one of our strategic partner, but I've got also very smaller vendors, and they're all helping us to reach this one. So to be nimble, you have to handshake with them, you have to get the smart guys on board, capture their ideas, and then basically bring in your business. If your business is missing from the scene, you will be nowhere.
Correct. Perfect. Andy, is it what exactly when we say human-centric innovation, is it what we are alluding to, what Mr. Saha was also mentioning, that bring in the right intelligent, smart people who are actually going to help the organization to make the curve, make the change?
Well, I think as Amit said, kind of repurposing people to be able to use the right vocabulary in engaging people to understand problems and to find the right solutions to problems. So I think that's definitely part of it. I think the human-centric innovation thing is a bit broader than that. I mean, it's really about the more that you can enable, the more that you can empower people to exploit their knowledge and expertise and find a wider context for that knowledge and expertise, you'll create a much richer environment. It's really about I think the era of startups and innovators, now they have a global platform. If you go back 20 years, cloud as we understand it today did not exist. So the impact of what I could have would be either to my community, my city, and maybe even to my region, maybe very, very occasionally to a national basis. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, you may be sat in Delhi, you may be sat in Bangalore, you might be sat in Canberra, you could be sat anywhere, and you have an opportunity to play on a global stage.
Right.
If you have an individual who's got a great concept, you can really create a different landscape for it. And I think some of the greatest companies in the world that are emerging now, people like Airbnb. I mean, basically it's a guy with a website and a concept, right?
Exactly.
Now, they're one of the biggest property owners on the planet. I mean, the value of that stock is in the billions now.
Right.
From what? From a concept.
Yep.
Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. All of these things are basically one to a handful of individuals creating exceptional value. That's human-centric innovation. That's basically putting people at the center of the way you think about solving problems. So a big thing about, I mean, one of the things that I find is about respect. You know, hierarchies in business or the way that business treats individuals has to be challenged. I think the reality is that hierarchies are there for a particular reason, to control, and it's industrialized thinking. We're not in the industrial age anymore. You know, industries are disappearing.
Correct.
And I think that, for me, is the essence of human-centric innovation. It reaches well beyond the today's thinking and paradigms, and that's really what I believe is that transformation. And they're all steps, you know, but I think you really need to think differently about how to treat the individual at the center of your thinking.
You have a point.
Just to add on the human-centric IT part, I think, we call it internally within Intel as a virtuous cycle of growth. Actually, it's a cycle which feeds itself.
Yeah.
You know, on the one end, you have the data center, and on the other end, you have all the connected devices on the edge. It can be laptops, desktops, drones, sensors, enabled bats. It could be anything. So, why it feeds itself? Because when you have more devices on the edge, you send more data at the back, on the data center. When you have more servers on the data center, what you do? You basically utilize to create new services. As soon as you create new services, you enable more customers, and you make customers at the edge to buy more devices. So that's why I think it's called human-centric IT, because it is being created and grown by the humans.
Is it also alluding to your digital fusion you were talking in the afternoon?
Yeah.
So from the Intel's point of view of marrying all the new age and the other aspects together, correct?
Yes, so has to be a mixture of both.
Lud, you have been sitting quietly for long, my bad. So I need to...
without a mic, so.
I can tell you for sure, Lud is never usually quiet.
So, interesting conversation going on, and if you actually look at the essence of it, we are talking about an integrated smart ecosystem, which actually helps all of us to move forward on that. Now, if you are looking at that, and if you're looking at highly collaborative, highly innovative ecosystem, which is actually helping all of us put together. Now, how Fujitsu, your point of view, we can actually, while integrated ecosystem is good to talk about, very difficult to build. You need to you need to hit the nail on the right spot. It's exactly the way it needs to be. I mean, that's what I believe. You have to correct me. Now, if that is the case, then how partners can actually come together to help the CIOs, help the decision makers, help business, not the CIOs, to co-create this ecosystem, so that business can actually be looking at, how am I going to get the most out of this digital disruption out there? What should be done? How Fujitsu can help, and how partners should be driving this one?
Okay, good. So first of all, I hope you can hear me, because...
Yeah. Oh.
So I think it's very important. You touched that point in a certain way before, talking about fast and slow. And you could also talk about revolution and evolution, right?
Yep.
And we're all seeing these beautiful examples like Uber and Airbnb and Dimension. So there are such beautiful examples of companies who created a revolution in the market and created something totally new. And the question obviously is if large enterprises have the ability to do that, right? So that's a question for me. And obviously Fujitsu is working a lot with large corporations. We're a large corporation ourselves, and we're working with large corporations to innovate. So in that way, what we obviously do, and that's the whole theme about co-creation, is to be extremely close with customers and not think that we have the answer for customers, but having a collaborative approach in which we also engage partners or Fujitsu actually to work with us and the customer and explore opportunities. So the whole concept of co-creation is that, not for us to think we have the answer, but to engage in a certain format and way and bring best talent of Fujitsu together, including talent from our partner companies, to work with customers in a collaborative way and come to views on what can be done and how and where to find the evolution or potentially the revolution.
Right. Interesting. Now, if I move the question onto the other end of the spectrum, because obviously practitioners are out here. Now, what do you expect the partners to actually do to get to those levels? Now, you were talking about what CIOs should be doing, how they should be, or how IT decision makers or how business technology decision makers should be looking at it on a whole. And this question is both of you, so please answer this. So maybe I'll begin with Mr. Saha, and then I'll move on to Mr. Bansal. If we need to build that systems of intelligence, that's right partner ecosystem, and to help co-create the value, what's the ask? How do you figure that one out? What do you ask the partners, and how do you select the right partner in that sense?
Okay. So I believe the place to start is back again into the business, because nothing will exist unless we create the business value. Sure. So let's take that for granted and then walk backward. Okay.
Yep.
So we sit with the business, we map the entire value chain, we look at what is happening currently, and because we are, and my team is in the digital space, we can identify that what are the possibilities. However, what we are looking at is within the silo of one organization. What your partner has already gathered in their experience is that they have already worked with multiple of such organizations. They have captured the experiences, they have captured the learnings through their failures and success.
Right.
Now, why should I not pay a little premium and bring those partners to help me rather bolster myself and deliver something with a larger confidence than try something out just by myself? Okay, so yes, I do have the capability of managing my partner. I do have the capability of envisioning the future along with the business, but I would really like to partner with these kind of organizations to come on board and help me find where can we create the value. So that's where the journey should start. Once we have identified in the value chain that these are the places where we can create the values, these are the places where the traditional mode of creating value is depleting, and we have to get rid of those ones, right? Typically what we call the white spaces, you need to squeeze them out because of your quality planning and all those things, right? Once this is done and you have a very efficient process laid out, then comes in the question is that what technology do we bring in? What kind of platforms do we bring in? Okay, what is the benefit of bringing these platforms? Are these platforms, I wouldn't say future ready or future proof, but will these platforms evolve in the future, right? Will one platform talk to another platform, right? So these are the critical inputs required in me making the decision that how do I go forward.
Right.
So start from the business value, capture that one, reorient your process based on what the partner is bringing in through the experiences, create the new ways of working, and then go back and work with your partner to identify which technology, which platform will enable that.
Perfect. Mr. Bansal, since you don the business hat as well, and Mr. Saha was mentioning from the IT decision maker, how would you then articulate this problem? You know, how would you then add on that there's an ask of the CIO and he's trying to build that as Mr. Saha was saying, and then there is an ask of the business because business needs to be involved. How do you balance all of that?
So again, so as Amit has said, there has to be a value for any action which you take. I can again take a live example wherein today healthcare industry in India is going through a phase wherein everyone is talking about affordable healthcare. There is a definitive gap in service the kind of service being provided. We have requirement of 2 million cardiac surgeries to be done in India. We are doing 300,000. So there is a gap of 1.7 million surgeries to be conducted across India. Now, how the gap can be filled? There is a skill issue, there is an infrastructure issue. Plus, there is an affordability factor which current government is already trying to bridge in. Now, this is the need. Now, as a medical technology company, I need to provide that value to my channel partner, and that and in turn to the hospital, and which in turn should pass on that benefit to the end customer, which is patient, right? So today I am holding 30 days inventory, my channel partner is holding 30 days inventory, my hospital is holding 30 days inventory. What if hospital works on just in time? Can my technology enable this entire process seamlessly? Can I work with my logistic partner to work out a ratio that I am able to deliver across India in 48 hours or 24 hours, right? So now technology can definitely enable this, right? There is an order which is logged in from the hospital, I receive it, there is agreed process. Technology definitely can do it, but for that I need to understand the business need, I need to entrust my business partner, I need to take on board those partners,
right,
and then execute the plan. And definitely, as Amit has said, it has to be validated from the point of scalability, evolution point of view.
Eventually,
So,
what's the value
yeah,
you are creating?
yeah, correct.
We have been talking about that. Perfect.
Can I just
Please,
add a couple of
absolutely,
points over
absolutely,
here?
absolutely.
And back to Andy's point that don't go to the ITs. The IT guys are absolutely smart in rolling out technology, right? But what they're not asking the question is, and this is typical of an IT person, is that in the urge to test whether I can do or not do, they're not asking the question, should I do or should I not, right? And that's a question that they can never answer. That's a question which has to be answered by the business. And that's where the co-creation creates the value.
Correct. Perfect. Perfect. So this is the time when I, open up to the audience, because we have already been talking, if you haven't realized, for almost 40 minutes. So, and I'm sure if we are holding on to the audience, we have been having interesting conversation for sure. Let me open it out. The mics are around. Just raise your hands, whatever questions you might want to ask in this context with the panelists out there. Just raise your hand and so that we can quickly identify you. There seems to be a question out here. Front row.
Thank you. My name is Suyash and I'm from DXC Technologies. My question is to Mr. Saha. You have rightly categorized that we have only 42 days of food if the farmer stops working for a day. And we see a lot of potentials into the agriculture market. The IT industry, in the service industry, or whether we are taking healthcare example, we have almost reached to a saturation point, or we have almost digitalized into but there is a lot of scope in agriculture market, and how digitalization can improve the life. This can not only create the jobs, it can improve the quality of life of the farmer as well. So how do you see that we can transform the life of farmer, and what are the challenges which we are facing while doing the digitalization into the agriculture sector?
Very, very valuable question. So the two parts to it, and I'll try to answer them one by one. How can we go out to the growers, right, and give them the technological support? So that's exactly where my organization, myself and my team is working with Fujitsu hand in hand. That is, how do we bring in different solutions, right? And in one of my presentations, I mentioned about the 3I, the first I being the increase the reach, right? Growers in Asia-Pac are smallholders. Their average land holding is less than 5 acres. That's a small piece of land, right? Which means that you have around 450 million growers in Asia-Pac. How do I reach out to 450 million growers? That's my challenge. But if I can, look at the benefit that I create, not just from my organization perspective in terms of creating revenue and the profit, but also if I can take the intelligence and the information to the grower, if I can tell him in advance when it's going to rain, if I can tell him, stop, don't sow your seeds now, do it after 2 days. If I can tell him, hold on, please spray this one on your field for 2 days, before you get into planting your seeds, if I can do all of these things, I ensure that his crop yield is much higher. I ensure that the crops do not have disease. You buy tomatoes in the market, right, which have got spots in it. Would you like that? No, right? You buy okra, which is not very well kind of grown or harvested, right? So we can do all of those things. To do that, the enablement is the digital. To your point, have we really reached everywhere in terms of digitalization? I would say no, not at all. I would say the journey has just started. Just started, okay? For example, we are thinking about some of the solutions on image processing, okay? Fujitsu has tremendous capability in terms of large processors, which can crunch lots of data at a very fast speed, because that's what I need. Digital is about the speed, right? The grower goes to the field, he sees that the leaf is tilted, okay? Or he sees that one of the tomato has a kind of a fungus on it, okay? The next guy in the next field also sees there's a fungus on it, and the third guy does the same thing. Me sitting in the back end in Syngenta, I know that it's coming from, I know the GPS location. So I know where are they coming from. And I say that they are co-located, they are very close to each other, which means there is a disease stress. There is a very high probability of an epidemic breaking out. Now, can I reach to these growers in advance and tell them, look, hold on, go to your retailer. This is your closest retailer. Go to him, and I tell the retailer that there is already a demand over here. If he doesn't have a stock, we move the stock right there itself. So this whole integrated solution, the end-to-end, to reach out to the grower, to inform the grower, to make the resources available to the grower, and guide him through the entire life cycle of the crop, that is digitalization. And honestly, we are nowhere close to that one. Okay? Thanks.
We have a question over there, and there are two, it seems.
Good evening. I'm Devesh from Barco. My question would be what is the plan to sensitize the people for this digitization? Because still in UP or you are right, we are just started. There is no electricity, and what is the plan for that sensitization or to provide the infrastructure to those peoples?
So sensitization of the end user, you mean, or the business?
Yes.
Okay.
The access
Okay.
means the information should be available to the end user as well. Means if the farmer doesn't know software is available or a thing is available to check whether the rain has come or not, when the seed has to be put out.
So if I just rephrase this and put it to both of you, and perhaps Andy can also join. Not just farmers, patients. End users, we need to have kind of an inkling on, okay, how something what you are co-creating is going to give me the value. That's, I think, you're trying to allude to. So how do we actually include them as well, the absolute and far end of the spectrum, also in the understanding of what and how life will change for you?
So again, when you already have created a value, that you have that value to offer to that maybe farmer or to a patient, but how to reach, again, that can also be done through your partners, right? So when I used to work in a hospital, we used to tie up with so many outreach programs we used to conduct. Okay, this is the facility, and then through those OPD centers, not only through a telemedicine, not only the patients were being seen, at least at the first stage, and then recommended the next course of action. I think we used to get almost 10 to 15% of those patients from those outreach programs which we were conducting. Same way, I think, Amit, your company would be trying to reach to those farmers who's working in those fields. With maybe target, you can say it's target audience, but definitely they would be reaching to those.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think one of the fundamental things is about education. So, my point about how to disseminate information to people is you have a whole spectrum of issues and problems that you need to deal with. I mean, if you talk about government initiatives like Digital India, for example, or Aadhaar, right? I mean, the reality is that that digital divide that existed between, let's say, the urban population in India and the rural population was always going to create a major obstacle to delivering knowledge and information to those people. But when you start to see some of the initiatives that are around Digital India, about actually, broadband access to all the villages, and 5G infrastructure, which would be a national capability, and then you start to create platforms in which you can start to disseminate information and educate individuals in those communities about things that are relevant to them. So I think wherever the context is, I don't think you should overthink the digital thing. I think you should always be expressing what is possible for the individual to achieve as a matter of being communicated to. Then they will innovate. They will think about the great things. They will think about, I'm in a local context. They will then start to add value to that. And I just think it's about, thinking about the ways in which we can educate people to consume knowledge and information that creates the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. You had a question over there? Okay. Can this be the last question so that I can go back to asking them? Otherwise, you are taking my job away. Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, like I said, Fujitsu is a leader in innovation that we know. Over 1 lakh papers have been patented to them, right? So what I want to know is that are we also doing some corporate social responsibility? And second, how technology and the leader like Fujitsu can help India, particularly in the scenario right now, farmers committing suicide because they are not able to meet their minimum price, paid to them. So can we think about some solutioning of such things wherein the farmers can directly maybe go to the virtual market and our tool can predict if that farmer is registered in our tool. Your tool can predict after 6 months this particular location will have this surplus amount of tomatoes or maybe potatoes, and some other area is deficient of that. So can technology really work so that to ease and make the world a better place to live in?
So hard question to answer for Andy and Lud, but I will still request them. Social innovation, how we can actually help.
First of all, Fujitsu's vision is about human-centric, intelligent society.
Yep.
I think, Fujitsu treats its CSR program, its corporate social responsibility, as one of its fundamental reasons for being in business. Fujitsu looks at it on a many-faceted aspect. Everything from Fujitsu provides some of the very basic material technology for some of the lowest power equipment. So Fujitsu invented a technology called gallium arsenide HEMT, which is for anybody who's got a mobile base station. The delivery of high-frequency mobile systems only became possible because Fujitsu invented this technology. And that technology is at such low power. Also, one of the innovations that you see outside is about us having liquid-cooled data centers. So this technology, in collaboration with companies like Intel, we're developing this technology that uses about 30% of what a normal data center would use today. So in an environmentally conscious way in delivering that. Then the example that we gave about San Carlos Healthcare is that what's AI got to do with mental health? Well, actually, it's got a lot to do. It can bring value. It can create social innovation, right? How to deliver those things is a complex regional delivery, whether it's hospitals, whether it's pharma, whether it's chemicals, whether it's technology providers. There's a complex equation in doing that. And you also need to find the right mechanism, because if you misfire, for example, let's say we gave the AI technology for mental health care to a government agency. Now, they may not know how to exploit it. So we may be, choosing the wrong delivery mechanism is also part of the challenge. So I think actually from a social responsibility point of view, that's where we're ending. right? I mean, that has to be in the mind, putting the individual at the center, whether it's a farmer struggling or somebody with mental health issues, somebody with disabilities. There are all facets that we can help. And I think Fujitsu really tries to think in those terms. I think many companies these days, corporate social responsibility is deeply ingrained within big business today. And obviously, we're only going to survive if we actually can treat people in the right way. So, for me, hopefully that's part of the answer. It's a very big question. Good question. And I mean, even though I'm not talking to IT people anymore, it's a really good question.
You have what to add, Lute? He kind of covered everything. Perfect. Now, looking at the clock, I'm absolutely out of time. Very, very interesting conversation. I'm sure you would all agree. And if I can just boil it down to the absolute essence of what these gentlemen have been talking for the last 45 minutes, is there is a very, very, it's imperative to actually build the right ecosystem. It's imperative to actually bring in and involve the whole spectrum of people, processes, technology being the just fundamental aspect to it. It's very critical to develop the culture of digital disruption, digital transformation, for even to start on the journey to co-create the value. And as Mr. Saha had said, the journey starts with one little question. We know how, we know when, we know where. We need to be asking why. Why am I doing this? I think with this, let me close this conversation to end. Please give it a big round of applause to the panelists out there. Thank you so much, and I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.